Welcome, my friends. This is an ongoing series that I'm doing on consciousness and natural law. We're looking at 14 methods of mind control. This is method 9, food and medicine. So we need to take a look at what's holding us back as a human species. What paves the way for ignorance, apathy, and control by the elites? If we're going to emerge from mind control, the dark state of consciousness that we are artificially being held in, then we need to raise our consciousness and put better things in our bodies. What we put in our bodies through food, drink, and medicine affects our minds. So we need to be mindful of what we read, the medicine we take, and what we watch and listen to. The saying, "we are what we eat," is true. And it's also true of what we watch and what we listen to. Therefore, garbage in equals garbage out. Food is one thing that we have a little bit of control over. We can control our eating habits. We can overcome bad habits, but it takes willpower. But most people are in such a profound state of ignorance. They have no idea what is good food, and they're eating toxic garbage, and this is affecting their minds. What you put into your mouth generates health, well-being, or sickness and apathy. The first doctor of modern civilization, Hippocrates, is credited as saying, "Let thy food be thy medicine, and thy medicine be thy food." However, most people are ignorant about what is decent food and what levels of toxins we can safely take into our bodies without affecting our minds, our judgment, our consciousness in general. And the only way that we're going to understand what we're doing to our bodies is by understanding what is being done to our food supply. Our willpower has been destroyed through food, including the will not to eat the food that we know is bad for us. So, in poisoning the body with poor food choices, we're also creating karmic damage. Ignorance has consequence, and illness will result from eating poison. Regardless of personal belief, doesn't matter what you believe, if you eat poison, your body will be affected and your mind will be manipulated. The body is the temple for the Holy Spirit, as it says in the Bible. Do you not know that you are the temple of God and that the Spirit of God dwells within you? 1 Corinthians 3 verses 16, King James Version. So the poisoning of the mind and body through food and medicine, well, that's a vast topic, and that would require many hours of explanation. What I'm doing in this video is just providing you an introduction, enough information so you can go away and research it for yourself. Each point will summarize how food impairs cognitive ability and how it applies to natural law. What is being done to our food is deliberate. The poisoning of the food supply is not just because of greed or corporatism. It is about mind control. We need awareness to have proper action. Thomas Jefferson, the third president of the United States, understood the mind-body connection. An attack on what we put into our bodies through food, medicine, and media is an attack on the mind-body connection that destabilize the body and the psyche. Once people are destabilized, they will be willing to believe anything. Now, Proper nutrition is critical for correct thinking. Unfortunately, the pharmaceutical industry wants people to believe that only drugs can generate health, and that health is not about nutrition. They want people to believe that you need medication, you need this to be healthy. It's not true. Now, the lack of quality nutrients significantly imbalances the brain, specifically the neocortex, which is at the top. The neocortex needs good nutrition, as it is the executive command center of the brain for higher rational thought. The destabilization of the neocortex through poor nutrition will fundamentally change our behavior for the worse. We will thus revert to a more reptilian-like mode of consciousness, the base mode of consciousness, the R complex, the consciousness of pure ego selfishness. And this is a more slave-like mentality. So you can refer to an earlier podcast that I did on how the brain works, about the left and right hemispheres. Now, we're also being denied good nutrition through legislation, specifically Codex Alimentarius, which makes nutrition, food and supplements illegal in the category of controlled drugs. More information about Codex Alimentarius is available from Dr. Rima Labo. The giant food corporation Heinz, these horrible ingredients in their products, including non-organic tomato concentrate, high fructose corn syrup, distilled vinegar, pesticides, high levels of added sugar and salt, etc. Food additives in Coca-Cola include chemical additives that have a negative impact on overall health. They include sodium cyclamate, a food coloring known as E150D, aspartame, which is an artificial sweetener associated with cancer, MS, epilepsy, Alzheimer's, and diabetes, and others. Health problems associated with carbonated soft drinks include MS, epilepsy, Alzheimer's, diabetes, and more. Also, as emphasized on Brightside, regular consumption of this beverage has been linked with numerous health issues, including obesity, cancer, kidney failure, skin and heart problems, anxiety, and dental erosion. Another evil food company is Kellogg's. Some of their products are made with 100% GMO corn and traces of Bt toxins and glyphosate. The most evil is Nestle. They incorporate GMOs in baby formula. Their products were found to contain melamine, an industrial poison. Purina baby formula contains propylene glycol, an animal toxin and ingredients in antifreeze. Other companies to avoid are Kraft, PepsiCo, Unilever, Hain Celestial, General Mills, and Campbell's. Now, many conventionally grown produce use substantial amounts of chemical pesticides and fertilizers. The toxicity from these pesticides becomes systemic to that food, which means that the poison is distributed throughout the fruit or vegetable, and therefore washing it will make no difference. It will not remove the pesticides. And long-term exposure to pesticides include dementia, In addition, Roundup has been linked to genetic damage and endocrine gland dysfunction and early death. Now, chemical fertilizers benefit the farmer. They make the soil turn over quicker. They replenish the soil's nutrients, which are depleted because of how crops are grown on a yearly cycle. Now, natural organic farming techniques allow time for the soil to replenish naturally, to become nutrient dense, and this is accomplished by rotating crops. Over-farming leads to the loss of topsoil and creates an environmental disaster. An example of this happened in the 1930s with the Great Dust Bowl in the United States. Food grown from depleted soil lacks nutrition, and if we want to improve our bodies and our minds, we need to be active in changing how our food is grown. And we do this by voting with our purchases. When we buy fruit and veggies, we buy organic. And we stop buying junk food. If we stop buying this rubbish, they will stop producing it. And to do this, we must care enough about our own bodies and the way food is grown. Care. Preservatives are chemical additives that improve the shelf life of food. Now, food is supposed to rot. Preservatives stop this natural process, and this is done for the profit of the company, the corporation, the producers, and the supermarkets. Unfortunately, these chemical preservatives are toxic, especially sodium nitrate that is used in cured meats such as salamis, which is carcinogenic, cancer-causing, and is linked with colorectal cancer. The nutritional value of food decreases the more food is processed. So try and avoid pre-packaged foods. White refined flour has no nutritional value and is added to most pre-packaged foods. High fructose corn syrup is even more damaging to health. The nutrition in rice is in the germ and the husk, and by removing these, you're removing the nutrition, all the nutritional value that rice had. So, white rice, white sugar, and white flour are bad. The general rule for health is, if man made it, i.e. it's packaged and processed, then don't eat it. Food colorings are artificial chemical additives to change the color of food, to make them more appealing. And once again, this benefits the manufacturer and has a detriment to the consumer. Artificial dyes affect brain function. They are linked to hyperactivity and behavioural disorders in children, ADHD, etc. Bleaching is done for the benefit of the manufacturer to make products look more appealing. It has no benefit to the consumer. White sugar, white flour, and white eggs are examples of bleached white foods. Bleached foods have harmful effects, and they are all tied to metabolic disorders, including inflammation, high blood sugar, diabetes, and obesity. These metabolic disorders lead to cardiovascular disease, to heart attack, heart failure. Artificial sweeteners are classified as excitatory neurotransmitters or excitotoxins. When they reach the brain, they open up the blood-brain barrier, and toxins that are usually filtered out get into the brain. Now, these artificial sweeteners include NutraSweet, aspartame, sucralose, Splenda, equal, and many others. They're always finding new names for them. Therefore, it is essential to avoid artificial sweeteners, the no sugar drinks. They also damage the central nervous system. So symptoms of artificial sweetener consumption include they make people jittery, they give people headaches, they reduce cognitive function and the ability to focus, to concentrate. Another completely artificial man-made neurotoxin, excitotoxin added to food to improve flavour is MSG, monosodium glutamate. SSRI antidepressants, for example, Prozac. Now, these are among the most dangerous compounds that you could take into your body. SSRI stands for Selective Serotonin Reuptake Inhibitor, and these reduce people's ability to feel emotions. They remove the moral compass. Now, we need to feel emotions. They play a massive role in our moral guidance system. People on antidepressants do not care about events in the world. They become detached. They don't care what doesn't directly affect them. So the best a person can do that is on these antidepressants is find a safe way to wean themselves off slowly. And then a person would have to deal with the problems in their life that caused them to be on the antidepressants in the first place. They would have to look at the causal factors. And this is working on oneself, confronting trauma. It requires self-knowledge, time, and willpower. It is said that reliving is relieving, which is to say, to resolve trauma, it has to be relived and processed, not locked away in a corner of the mind. Serotonin produces a feeling of well-being, and SSRIs prevent serotonin from reabsorbing, and this increased levels of serotonin causes a person to level off in their emotions, and they prevent them from experience a full range of emotions that we're supposed to experience. They create a zombie-like state of consciousness. SSRIs should only be prescribed to people who have an organic problem with their brain. People that have no control over their emotions. But they are overprescribed in the general population. They're given to people with normal range of emotions. Everyone goes through periods of sadness. Everyone has temporary depression. And we're supposed to have those emotions. We're supposed to deal with our problems and get on with life. Trans fats are horrible. They include things like canola, margarine, and homogenized vegetable oils. They create arterial grooves in the arteries of the body, especially around the heart, and they contribute to heart disease. Margarine is a trans fat that is pure poison. Canola, Canada oil, originally called rapeseed oil, it strips the linings of arteries, and it is linked to heart disease. For more information about trans fats, please refer to the work of Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn. Chlorine is added to drinking water for purification. Chlorine is also absorbed through the skin, and it's inhaled through water vapor, having a shower. And this also causes arterial grooving and heart disease. Fluoride is a poisonous byproduct of the aluminium manufacturing process. Fluoride is added to rat poison, and it was added to the drinking water supply of Nazi Germany concentration camps. They made the prisoners docile, easier to control. Fluoride is added to drinking water for supposed benefits to dental health, but they cause calcification in the pineal gland, and this inhibits spiritual growth. Both chlorine and fluorine are dangerous poisons that should be banned from our water supply. To purify water, UV radiation can be used instead of chlorine. So let's take a look at high fructose corn syrup, HFCS. This is not a natural product. It's a manufactured chemical process, and its consumption destabilizes critical thinking. The health concerns that are linked with HFCS include a fatty liver, high triglycerides, insulin resistance, high blood sugar, and increased level of type 2 diabetes. So this is definitely foods that you should avoid. Foods containing HFCS. They include sodas, candy, ice cream, breakfast foods, snack foods, and packaged desserts, and many other products. GMOs, or genetically modified organisms. Now, the genetic modification of a species is done for profit motives. They produce GMO crops, produce larger crops and faster turnaround, for example. Unfortunately, by modifying the genetic blueprint of a species, this causes more problems than it solves, and it creates permanent effects in the genetic gene pool. The main concern about the adverse effects of GM foods on health are that they transfer antibiotic resistance to people. They are toxic, and they cause allergenicity. So antibiotics are given to caged animals, and this poisons their meat. Those antibiotics also transferred to humans when consumed. Antibiotics can be found in GMO crops as well, also in drinking water and medicines. These antibiotics build up in our system. They create antibiotic resistance, and this makes the treatment of illness more difficult. And eventually, taking antibiotics to combat an infection will not work because of antibiotic resistance. Meat from factory-farmed animals is poisoned with the adrenaline that is released from the stress that the animal feels when it's going to the slaughterhouse and when it's killed. The meat is also poisoned with GMO corn that they had consumed over their lifetime, and the antibiotics that were given to them. So now, statistics are showing that there's an increased level of heart disease, diabetes, and cancer from modern industrial animal agriculture. In the Bible it says, "So, in everything, do unto others as that you would have them do unto you." Matthew 7 verses 12. This is a universal principle, and is also known as the law of karma. It refers to how we treat others, and I would extend that to the animal kingdom. The law of karma is a principle of natural law. According to natural law, those who harm animals in the cruel practices of factory farming will themselves be harmed. And those who consume tortured and poisoned animals will also be harmed. Now, we wouldn't treat our children the way that animals are treated in factory farms. Animals have feelings. They care for their young. They feel pain, just like we do. Pasteurization and homogenization of milk destroys the nutrients and proteins. They make the healthy fats rancid. They cause free radicals to form in the body. In addition, pasteurization and homogenization denatures milk by altering its chemical structure and causes damage to the lining of arteries, which increases the risk of heart disease. Deceptive labeling by manufacturers is a technique of obfuscation, which is confusing people. For example, the renaming of high fructose corn syrup as crystalline fructose, or labeling white bread that has been dyed brown as whole grain bread. Food producers were successful in forcing legislation through so that they do not have to label food containing GMO. New names are invented for foods that we know are poison, like aspartame. They hide the fact that these ingredients are toxic. Irradiating food, or applying radiation to food, damages it by breaking up the molecules, and this creates free radicals. The free radicals kill some bacteria, but not all. Irradiation is done at the borders, so food imported will not contain any pests or unwanted bacteria. But instead, free radicals bounce around in food. They damage the vitamins and enzymes, and they combine with existing chemicals like pesticides. They form new chemicals called unique radiolytic products, URPs. Irradiation also destroys the nutrition in food, so that all food does is fill a hole, and it doesn't provide any nutrition, the nutrition that the body needs. So this was just an introduction to the topic. I encourage you to do more research on your own. And join us on the next episode. We're going to look at the illusion of time.